There's another issue that is very important. I think it has made headlines on social media, and a number of social media platforms have got this video playing about the Zimbabwean president, that is Emerson Mnangagwa. Let's just take a look at this particular video, then on the other side we get to hear your views on this one, Mark.
The relations just ended there. And thereafter, both the British and the Americans have not looked upon us. They think that we are too much inclined to the East. But we have no apologies at all. We feel we are better. In relations with the people also respect us, not the persons who look down upon us. So we are very happy to be here. And we are anxious to actually have our relations more comprehensive and consolidated between ourselves. Yes, we are a very advanced country, but there's a lot that we can learn from you. There's a lot that we can benefit from that relationship. And there's a lot that we can open for the Russian Federation to participate in our economy, especially in the mining sector and in agriculture. There's a lot that we can afford for you to participate. And in that process, the West will run away. You see, the West have just begun consolidating their power in Zambia, our next neighbor. You know, there was a time when Zambia and Zimbabwe won. It was called Northern and Southern Rhodesia. It was won by the British, but they were now separate. And the Americans are consolidating their power in that country, both in terms of security and in terms of financial support to Zambia, to make sure that we feel lonely. But that will not change us, because we have taken a course which, as a people, that we feel we want to be independent, and we choose our friends ourselves. And besides, we are independent today because most of us in the leadership trained here during our war of liberation. We got our independence because we were supported by yourselves here. And you don't forget that history. And you've stood by us. So, Mr. President, I am happy to be here, and if opportunity avails later on, I mean, we may find time to chat and go into more detail as which areas we must focus in terms of supporting each other, and in terms of where we feel we need external support, more especially in the area of defense and security, as well as food security. In those areas we need to be supported, the mechanization of agriculture and so on. We can't go to the West. We have to come here because the West would want to see us down. They support our neighbors, Zambia and Malawi, very heavily. But in spite of
Earlier on in the day, Mark, I was talking to somebody and I was saying that, Mr. Mnangagwa, whatever it is that he was presenting to President Putin, I think he forgot to also add on to say that during the liberation of Zimbabwe, Zambia was very much instrumental. And of course, the other part that he himself actually has got roots in Zambia, in Mumba to be specific, and that he still has some of his family members living in Zambia, in Mumba. Anyway, a little bit away from that, some time back we did talk about this, that grand conspiracy thing. I think we discussed it on this very platform, and this time around we are hearing the president of Zimbabwe talking to President Putin about what he says that Zambia has got this link or this friendship with the West, and the West is seemingly, putting in so much support into Zambia and Malawi, who are the neighbors of Zimbabwe, and not into Zimbabwe, but they've chosen their friends already.
Exactly, that makes a sad reading, and I think it's the first time we are hearing an African state calling on superpowers to come and interfere in Africa.
Yeah.
Those that are Pan-Africanists will not agree with you.
Yeah.
It is strange. We could hear of such things mostly in the Middle East. In Ukraine, asking for another superpower, USA, to get weapons to Ukraine.
Yeah.
I know African leaders have raised eyebrows. They are wondering
what's happening.
Correct. And I saw what Kalaba posted, where he said that it's unfortunate that our relationship is getting sour and so on. But I also need to mention that if you look at the genesis of some problems, we have opposition leaders that went into Zimbabwe and caused part of the problem.
Yeah.
So this has a clear strategic genesis. whose roots, even when you see it, cannot be doubted. When you look at Zambia, without looking at any foreigner, you can actually fill in the blanks which politicians could trigger such kind of misinformation.
Oh yeah.
Either to the Zimbabwean brothers and sisters, even lying to them or cheat. When you assess Zambia's political landscape, you can actually tell which political leaders have done something similar to that, and who may have leaked fake information.
Oh yeah.
Okay? With the intent to destabilize the situation for political expedience. So now you can actually see that you don't need to go beyond the borders of this country to understand where instability is coming from. You simply need to look at Zambia's political landscape. Right. Then you'll have the answer. Now that is food for thought.
Yeah.
Then secondly, I mentioned also that it is unthinkable to find an African state calling on a superpower to come and interfere.
Yeah.
Okay? And once we go on that trajectory, we're basically going on the trajectory on some Asian countries that have problems. It is the issues that some countries are trying to avoid. And look, the beauty is that we have bilateral relations with Russia.
Oh yeah.
Meaning, Russia has more presence in Zambia than in Mnangagwa. Okay? Who would get information just like they already know what is going on in Zambia. Even I'll give you an example of the Africa Land Forces Summit.
The one that was held.
It was first held. It was held in Botswana. Was it in Malawi as well? Malawi also held it. It must have been held. It should be Ethiopia and Kenya. This was the fifth one we are holding. Where all African, and in that Africa Land Summit, you may recall that certain countries were excluded, especially those countries that may have been under sanctions, and all those things, like Niger, Zimbabwe, among others. It took your president HH, because the African Land Forces is an initiative of improving communication among African states. In terms of military communication, there's no misunderstanding, helping them to understand issues of PR and integration, to ease and to avoid possible conflicts due to poor communication. And also help them understand how to Africa can deal with its own problems. Because right now, as we are talking, you find in some parts in West Africa and in East Africa, there are soldiers overseas and not from the African Union to help. Do you get the point? So then, if African problems of that nature should be resolved by Africans, we should not get those people. But then we need to develop our skill in settling these disputes.
When you talk about that,
let me deal with it.
In West Africa, we've had recently we've been hearing of the French army, the French forces pulling out from Mali, for instance, because of that junta agreement which fell off, and in a number of countries in West Africa.
That has been the call by the AU. The idea is to trigger the appetite for many superpowers like France and so on to pull out that can we resolve these issues and misunderstandings as Africans. Because when they do that, you find people that belong to different parts will seek help elsewhere, and instability escalates. So I was about to make a point by indicating that it took your head of state, because this particular Africa Land Summit is sponsored by USA. USA sponsors so many programs. There is US Africa Leadership Summits. You've seen them where presidents from Africa will go to Washington and they sponsor different programs under PEPFAR, under health. Many countries in Southern Africa have been receiving all those things. Now, I think the point I'm trying to drive home is that when the sponsors of the program did not want Zimbabwe to be part of the summit, do you know what your president did? President HH, he had to also take a position and told the sponsors, USA, that since we are the hosts and we have neighbors, allow us to exercise our discretion to know who to invite. President HH had to go out of his way and invited Zimbabwe, which was excluded, to attend. And that's how Zimbabwe attended. So I was saying it is unfortunate that obviously that could be recorded in that manner, and obviously even the African Union must be they are agitated, they are wondering that why would someone say such a thing? If there is a problem, obviously it should have gone to SADC.
Then from SADC,
the problem should have gone to AU. Why would our brother move and go to Russia and call for such.
Yeah.
So this is how, if we are not careful in Africa, we create instability. The situation in Zimbabwe is regrettable in the sense that it is not Zambia that has imposed sanctions. At the time of Mwanawasa, those sanctions started. Zimbabwe has seen a lot of problems. We sympathize with them. We have Zimbabwean brothers in Zambia. We have come a long way. Like Mugabe was once said that Zambia and Zimbabwe are twins.
Yeah.
And the Zambezi River is the umbilical cord.
Uh-huh.
We are a federation. We were a federation from 1953 to 1963, and we've always been together.
Yeah.
Then he excludes himself. He says Malawi and Zambia, they are being treated differently, so that we feel isolated, and we've been isolated. But there are issues that are underlying, which are obviously sanctions. Malawi and Zambia have no control of those things. Oh, yeah. They can only advocate, as your president did, advocating and say, President Biden, please allow us to do what we want to do. Because oftentimes they would go and say those things and say, no, our colleagues in Zambia are pro-West. There are decisions that Zambia has made which are even, which don't go away with the West. I'll give you an example. I'm concluding. I'll give you an example. One China principle.
Yeah.
Zambia does not agree with USA. Because Zambia is a sovereign state. We have bilateral relations with different countries. We have bilateral relations with Russia. HH and Putin, Mnangagwa was talking to. They also talk because of bilateral relations.
Yeah.
We have an embassy there in Russia.
Yeah.
And we have deployed Zambians there. We have an ambassador for Russia here. And they engage with the head of state. So obviously, it is regrettable. Obviously, we would wait for government. I know that they will go a diplomatic way. The way when some of us know HH, engage the brother who was invited. They were together in Livingston recently. Okay? So under SADC, obviously they will discuss. That's a diplomatic issue that borders on international relations, which I believe will be handled differently.
Yeah.
And we look forward to a situation where these issues are handled amicably. And like I mentioned in winding up, that we helped Zimbabwe get independence. Zambia's military helped Zimbabwe get independence.
Yeah.
We cannot be the first ones to go and destroy Zimbabwe. For what? What is our interest in Zimbabwe?
All right,
so
Mark.
I thought I needed to end on that note. And for your record,
yes,
on the ZANU-PF being part of it, Dr. Mpofu is fairly close with Batuke Menda, very good friends. So I thought maybe party-to-party relations, as they improve, also bilateral relations could be one of the things that could be explored. I thought I needed to end there.
Thank you so much for making it to the program today. We should be hoping to talk again next week at the same time.
Thank you.
All right, our dear viewers, we've come to the end of Media Introspection on Prime TV this week. And on behalf of Max Moore and indeed Fumbe Chanda, who is engaged with some other assignments, but she'll be joining us next Saturday. My name is Tommy Samuel Tembo. Good evening and pleasant viewing.